Just the mic, Rip, thank you. Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Kevin Winge. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Club. We're gonna hold the show for a few more minutes. As you know, Ambassador Eric Rubin is with us today, and he was just asked to do a television interview. So they're finishing up the interview, but we wanna make sure that as many people as possible hear about the current state in Ukraine. So if you can please bear with us for a few more minutes. As soon as the ambassador is done with the interview, we'll get the program started. Thanks. Good afternoon again. Thank you for your patience. Again, I'm Kevin Winge. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Club. We are thrilled that you are all here today as we did a fundraiser for Ukraine almost exactly a year ago today with the same partners that we have today, our friends from Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church, and of course the amazing Isles Ensemble and Ambassador Eric Rubin. We were about 3 weeks into the invasion the last time we gathered here for a fundraiser for Ukraine. We were hoping not to have to do this again this year, but the war continues, and all of us want to continue to bring attention to what's happening to Ukraine, and hopefully everyone here today will continue to be incredibly generous. The 3 organizations that we're raising money for today are amazing and will certainly benefit from all that everyone is doing here today. So again, thank you for your patience. We will get the performance started, and thank you for being here and for supporting the work that good people are doing in Ukraine. Enjoy.
Good afternoon, everyone in the audience, everyone online. Thank you so much for being here and being part of this event. Just a couple things about all the music you're going to hear. We're not going to tell you about all the composers. Please look them up, but they're all composers none of us knew before or very little about, and many of them have written a lot of really good music. 2 or 3 of them have really suffered for their music, especially Barvinsky and Klebanov. They were both had all their music destroyed in the Stalin era. Some of it's come back. And Silvestrov, at the end, he's currently living in Germany. He felt he had to leave Ukraine. He's the only living composer. The piece we're going to play is very interesting. It was written in 2014, the year Crimea was annexed, and the composer died about 5 years ago. It's a very moody, dark, and gorgeous piece. And also, for all of you who are here and online, tell other people about this event. You'll be able to watch it afterwards, and we're hoping for a huge amount of donations eventually by the time we're done with this whole thing. Thank you.
Just, hello. Just wanted to say a couple of words about the next piece. Not a piece specifically next piece, but about composer in general. A year ago, I had no idea who was it, Victor Kosenka. And apparently, then we discovered all this beautiful Ukrainian music, and this name popped out, and I started listening more and more of his music, and really liked that. He had quite a tragically short life, and but very prolific, lyrical, just beautiful, beautiful lyricist. And I'm going to play one of his early works for piano solo, Nocturne Fantasy. It has a beautiful flavor, somewhat reminiscent to the music of Alexander Scriabin, so I hope you enjoy it.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Shank, and I'm a founding member of the Isles Ensemble. We've been around for close to 20 years now, and we have always had our home base at Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church. We could not be here today, and we would not have made it this long without the support and encouragement of Pastor Arden Haug. Please welcome him to the stage.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you all for being a part of today's concert. This is actually for Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church, our third concert to support Ukraine. And the first took place right after the takeover of Crimea, when we were asked by the pianist that you have just heard, Ivan Konyev, if there was anything that we could do to raise money for what are IDPs, the independent and internally displaced persons. Because they were no longer refugees, but they were displaced within the country. And so we raised money working together with the Swiss-based, Geneva, Switzerland-based church organization, Alliance for Churches Together. And so we were able to, at that time, to send money to a place that now is on the border again, and that was for a displaced persons camp in Zaporizhia. Now that is the border between Ukraine and the Russian territories that are fought over. This is the third concert. Last year, we worked together with the organizations of the Lutheran churches that were based around Europe, taking in the refugees, which now were many in number. And so the funds that we raised last year of over $65,000 at this concert were used to help refugees. But today, and today's concert this year, we determined that it was better to actually turn to the Ukrainian community here in the Twin Cities and ask where would be most beneficial to help in the Ukrainian cause. For ultimately what we are most involved in is the survival of Ukraine and a free people. And so they suggested, and we agreed together, the Isles Ensemble and Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church, that we would support the three organizations that you see in your programs today. Protez Foundation, which works with prosthesis for soldiers that have been injured in war, for the Ukrainian American Community Center for its own refugees resettlement program, and finally, we're drawing upon the resources of other Ukrainian musicians here in the Twin Cities, Yuri, Ivan, to look at Caritas Transcarpathia, to look at the work of one of the orphanages in that part of Ukraine. So we tried to feature and to look at all the areas that were needing of funds during this time. We invite you both to give online, and as a pastor, I often say, you can always give again if you didn't think you gave enough the first time. But indeed, go online to loti.org, Loti.org. You can give there. Or at the end of today's concert, we also will be receiving checks. The church will serve as the conduit, and the funds will be distributed through these organizations, through the church. Again, thank you for being a part of this program today. Thank you for the hosting that is done by the Women's Club of Minneapolis. And thank you again to the Isles Ensemble for their desire to support the work and the survival of Ukraine.
I have sung in many, many languages over a long career. I'm very, very comfortable in French, German, Italian, Spanish. I've sung in Polish. I've sung in Welsh. I've sung a little bit in Slovenian. But until today, I have not been heard singing in Ukrainian. And what amazed me when I started to look for some music for this program was how difficult it is in America to get hold of Ukrainian song. And that's something that should really change. I think one of the strange side effects of this horrible war is that a lot of us in the West are discovering Ukrainian music and how hard it is to get our hands on it. So today we are first doing for you a piece by Lysenko, and then another that's almost taken on a sort of a folk music status in Ukraine. The first one by Lysenko, many of you may know the great British composer Vaughan Williams, and you've heard his Green Sleeves variations, for example. He was one of a big crew of British composers and sort of musicologists who realized at the end of the 19th century into the 20th century that a lot of the great folk music of England was dying off with the elderly people of England. So they began to collect those folk songs. And the same thing was happening at the very same time in Hungary with Kodály, in Czechoslovakia with Bartók, and really all over Europe. And Lysenko was kind of in the space of Vaughan Williams in Ukraine. And so this piece is not specifically a folk song, but it has a folk feeling. And he was a composer, pianist, teacher, and musicologist, as well as being sort of the father of a movement in Ukraine to write music with a national flavor to it. So if it sounds a little bit folky, that's why. And the poem itself is by one of the great poets of Ukraine, Taras Shevchenko. And then the second piece that we'll do is one that I knew nothing about, but when we were looking for music, Ivan said, you really should do Czarnobrywcy, and that is marigolds. And I think we, in America, know that the sunflower is the official flower of Ukraine. They grow an enormous amount of the world's sunflower seeds there, in sunflowers, of course. And that has something to do with the colors that we're all wearing, the color of the flag. But I didn't realize that marigolds are at least as popular a flower there. They grow wild everywhere. People plant them. They have a place in seemingly the national spirit of Ukraine. And this second song that we'll do has that feeling of nostalgia for a person's mother, a personal mother, and for Ukraine as the motherland. And the marigolds are the symbol of that.
Well, that was pretty exciting, right? I mean, I have to calm down after that. Anyway, thank you so much for being here today, all of those out in TV land. Thank you for watching and listening. At this point, it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce you to Ambassador Eric Rubin, who is the president of the American Foreign Service Association. Ambassador Rubin was elected to serve as president of the American Foreign Service Association after a recent posting as U.S. ambassador to Bulgaria from 2016 to 2019. Joining the Foreign Service in 1985, after graduating from Yale, he started as a political and human rights officer in Honduras. In 1989, he was assigned to the State Department's Operations Center. From 89 to 91, he worked in the Office of Soviet Union Affairs, where he monitored and reported on the collapse of the Soviet Union. Next, he served as the Security Affairs Officer for Central and Eastern Europe. He left Washington in 1994 for Kiev, Ukraine, as Deputy Political Counselor. While there, he was a recipient of AFSA's William Rivkin Award for constructive dissent by mid-level officers for his work on the Bosnia crisis. In 1996, he returned to Washington to work for the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Canadian Affairs. From 97 to 98, he served as an Assistant White House Press Secretary for Foreign Affairs, and in 1998, he was the Special Assistant to Ambassador Thomas Pickering, then the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs. From 1999 to 2000, Ambassador Rubin was a Rusk Fellow at the Institute for Study of Diplomacy at Georgetown University, where he enjoyed teaching about diplomacy. In 2001, he was posted to Chiang Mai, Thailand as Consul General, and in 2004, he returned to Washington as the Director of the Office of Policy Planning and Coordination in the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs. In 2006, he served as the Executive Assistant to our Nicholas Burns, the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs at the time. And then from 2008 to 2011, he served as the Deputy Chief of Mission in Moscow, and from 2011 to 2015, he served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs. Anyway, before I introduce Ambassador Rubin, I just want you to know that we have been friends since we figured out we were 8 years old at religious school. And then, so we've been friends for a long, long time. Please put your hands together for Ambassador Rubin.
Thank you very much, Ken, and thank you all for coming today. I'm thrilled to be back here for the second year in a row for this wonderful benefit concert, and I do want to start out, first of all, by thanking Ken, who truly is a lifelong friend, for having made it possible for me to be here, for thanking the Women's Club of Minneapolis for once again hosting this event, the Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church for pushing so hard to see this happen again, and for doing so much to support the people of Ukraine, and the Isles Ensemble for bringing us just such incredible music. And I'm very glad to be here, even though it is more than a year later since the start of the horrible war in Ukraine, the invasion of sovereign Ukraine by the Russian Federation. And when we were here a year ago, I confess that I personally, and I think many of us, hoped that this would soon come to an end. Maybe not completely, maybe not in terms of a lasting peace treaty, but just an end to the suffering, an end to the terrible carnage and displacement that has occurred, but also an end to the challenge to the international order, to the values that we as Americans I think collectively hold dear, and the challenge to the world system as it exists, the system that will be the system that our children and grandchildren inherit. And here we are more than a year later, and there's no end in sight. And I know that's very discouraging, and I sometimes talk to people who say, well, there must be a better answer. There must be some way to bring this to an end. And of course, there has to be, and we have to keep trying to find it. But in the meantime, the people of Ukraine need us. They need our help. They need our support. Not just sympathy, but concrete support. And I want to salute everyone who has contributed to helping the people of Ukraine in their hour of need. I also confess that I never imagined throughout my long career, and even going back to when I first studied Eastern and Central Europe in college, and when I traveled and lived there, that we would see something like this, that we would see such an awful moment, see things that we haven't seen since the end of World War II in Europe, and truly see one of the worst crises in our lifetimes. Sometimes people say, well, why are we so concerned about Europe? You know, we have so many horrible things happening all over the world, and of course that's true. And sadly there are, but this actually is in many respects the worst crisis that we have faced. Ukraine is a country of more than 40 million people, and the latest estimates are that at least a quarter of the Ukrainian population has either been displaced or have become refugees. And those are just the people who have had to flee their homes. It's about 10 million people. We haven't seen anything like that, really probably since the partition of India in 1947. And then the rest of the population, the other 75%, have their young men and women, because Ukraine's army is truly a co-educational army, if you want to call it that, in a very impressive way, but also the population that has stayed in their homes, mostly in urban areas. Most people live in apartments in fairly tall buildings. And if you can only imagine what it's like to live in a 15th floor apartment without electricity or heat or running water in the middle of the Ukrainian winter, that's something that millions of Ukrainians are experiencing every moment, not maybe 100% of the time, but much of the time. Why is that? Because Russia is not just trying to take territory in Ukraine. It's not just trying to destroy Ukraine as an independent country, but it is targeting civilian infrastructure. It is targeting schools and power plants and dams and hospitals, again, in a way that we haven't seen in modern war in my lifetime, I would feel comfortable saying. And we have to stand firm and say this can't be the world going forward. This can't be the new normal. Not just because it's Europe, not just because Ukraine is a democracy and the people of Ukraine have chosen to have a future of their own choosing as an independent country, but because this can't be the way that countries relate to each other, and this can't be the way that governments treat people. So obviously the humanitarian needs are urgent, and everything we can do to help support the people of Ukraine in all the ways that I hope your donations will help do, and in all the ways that our country, the United States, is doing together with its European allies and our allies in Asia and Oceania and elsewhere to support Ukraine in its hour of need. We have to keep doing that, but we also have to insist that this is a really key turning point in the world, and this just cannot be accepted. And we cannot say peace at any price. I've been asked many times, well, can't we just support a settlement? And the answer is, I wish we could. There's no possible, stable, durable settlement in sight right now. And that's partly because the vast, vast majority of Ukrainians have said, we will not give up our independence, we will not give up our freedom, we will not be conquered. And that's very powerful. It's also very, very frightening and very painful. So what we can do is keep doing what we're doing, which is to help the people of Ukraine, to support efforts to support the country of Ukraine in its hour of need, to keep our eyes on a more hopeful future, and to say that what we do now will matter going forward, and everything we do matters. And I think the most important thing is to keep that vision alive through concrete words and deeds and contributions. So thank you again for coming today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everything you're doing at this very important time for the world, for Ukraine, and for our country. And thank you for inviting me once again. Thanks.
I think I'll just use the microphone for this. Just a few remarks about this unusual piece. It is from a much larger piece, about a 40-minute long, or maybe over an hour long, sort of a song cycle by this Valentin Silvestrov, who's one of the few Ukrainian composers who I think some of us know in the United States. I did not know him, but the violinist Joanne Opgenorth suggested this piece. And at that time, didn't have a score for it, so it was a bit of a scramble to try and find the actual notes to sing it from. But I think you'll see why it has become a very popular piece, one of his most popular vocal pieces. And as far as the translation goes, it's on the back of your program in quite small type. And not only that, we have too much translation there, and that's my fault, because I just grabbed it from someone else's website and assumed it was going to be what we needed. But it's more than we need, because we will have today the first 3 verses and then a repeat of the first verse. And I'm just going to read it aloud to you. Goodbye, world, O earth, farewell. Unfriendly land, goodbye. My searing pain, my tortures cruel, above the clouds I'll hide. As for you, my dear Ukraine, I'll leave the clouds behind and fall in the dew to talk with you, poor widow country mine. I'll come at midnight when the dew falls heavy on the fields, and softly, sadly we will talk of what the future yields. Goodbye, world, earth, farewell, unfriendly land, goodbye. My searing pain, my tortures cruel, above the clouds I'll hide.